Okay, so Gatsby chapters 4 to 7. We're going to talk about symbols and ideas in there. I should mention, I don't know how many of you checked this document since yesterday, but my intention was for you to read through chapter 7, not stop at the beginning of chapter 7. So hopefully you did that. And hopefully you know that Daisy killed Myrtle. I know, right? But not on purpose, it seems, except maybe. I'll let you read it for yourselves. So I still haven't figured out exactly what the color yellow is meant to symbolize. This is Abby's contribution. But the first time I really started to wonder was when Myrtle gets run over by Gatsby's yellow car. In addition, Daisy was driving it. Now, before we get to the green light, I want to talk about yellow. Because I think I said when you first started to read, watch for yellow. And did you guys notice how many times it comes up? Like so many. Yeah.
I marked every single time it said it.
Okay, so far more than just could be random chance, you would think, right? You would agree with that? It's not accidental that yellow is mentioned so many times, and other colors almost never. So what do we make of that? Aside from, I haven't figured out exactly what it's meant to symbolize. That's okay. I should point out that you never should figure out exactly what anything is meant to symbolize. But that's not really how symbols work. It should be general ideas, right? So anything that he wanted to say directly, and he being Fitzgerald, he could just say directly or write directly. But themes and symbols are more things for us to discuss than they are for us to find answers to. So if we discuss what yellow is, like, is there a common thread of the things that he describes as yellow? Emily, you were noting those down. Have you got a common thread in sort of the types of things that are described as yellow?
I haven't really gone over them yet. I just, every single time I saw the word yellow, I marked it down, but I haven't specifically gone to look back to find.
Okay. Has anybody done a find, a control F on the digital doc? Let's see what happens if we do that. Okay, here we have it. Okay, so 24 times something is described as yellow. If we are to believe this, it seems important. So let's think about the sort of things that we associate with the color yellow. So, what's yellow? Okay, well that's even more abstract than I was thinking, but yes, you're right. Yellow is associated with happiness in the sort of general vocabulary of colors and what they mean, in the same way that blue is associated with sadness. I guess that would make green happy sadness, because it's, no, that's terrible, never mind. Forget I said that. So Enormous yellow spectacles on, this is on Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, the billboard that we discussed, and if you watched the YouTube videos that I spent hours editing for you before, you'll know that T.J. Eckelberg, or at least his eyes, are generally interpreted as God in this story. The all-seeing and maybe faintly judging that looks out over the things that happen in the story. Yellow spectacles seem quite unusual. Now, I don't know if we know much about the eyewear fashions in the 1920s. Anyone happen to be an expert on that? Nor I. I will admit ignorance in the area of eyeglass fashions in the 1920s. But I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that these aren't bright yellow plastic frames in the 1920s. I can't imagine that being a thing. Perhaps you can. But what would make the spectacles yellow? So, I'll leave that with you, and let's think about it. The only building in sight was a small block of yellow brick sitting out on the edge of the wasteland. A sort of compact main street ministering to it and contiguous to absolutely nothing. So we're still talking about Dr. Eckelberg's persistent stare, and yellow brick is what stands out in the Valley of the Ashes. So the yellow glasses, the yellow brick, where everything else we're kind of given is gray, and they even describe the people there as gray or composed of ash, and this is obviously not meant to be literal. What else? Yet high over the city, our line of yellow windows must have contributed their share of human secrecy to the casual watcher in the darkening streets. Interesting again, too. So we're describing then think of a apartment building in the big city at night that's lit on the inside. So from the outside, it looks like yellow windows. But again, it's associated with vision, and you may have noticed that vision is a recurring sort of theme or element in the story. The next one is Gatsby's car, referred to as scampering like a brisk yellow bug. So this is the first reference we have to, however, not a brisk yellow bug like one of those ugly round Volkswagen things, but this is a Rolls Royce, but yellow in color. So far maybe a little bit of yellow being a standout color, a little, certainly fanciness associated a little bit. This one is one of my favorites, and this is where Ella's interpretation, I think, has to come into it. Where in chapter 3, you'll remember, I hope, was Gatsby's party, and the orchestra is playing yellow cocktail music. Now, music being for most of us, a non-visual thing, despite the rumors that some people can hear notes as colors, and that's how they're able to have perfect pitch and being able to hear a note and go, oh, that's a C sharp or whatever. I don't know if you are familiar with any of that, but some of you are musical, I know. But generally, music is not described as yellow. Sometimes it's described as blue, though. And so that maybe gives us some direction here. It's probably important to notice that the blues as a genre would have been in its infancy, and he's likely not intentionally drawing this as the opposite of the blues. However, I think that we have to imagine an orchestra playing yellow cocktail music as them playing things that are bright, light and bright, perhaps. Maybe quick, but not too quick. Cocktail music would be music that's meant to be in the background, right? It's meant to be experienced, but not paid too much attention to. So that's interesting. Two girls in twin yellow dresses. These are the golf fans that were sort of trying to be friends with Jordan Baker at the party. We have, again, the girls in yellow. The girls in yellow dresses again. The girls in yellow dresses again. The girls in yellow dresses again. Powder on your old yellowy hair. This is Daisy talking to the baby. This is about cars. It's a nice yellow one. So again, yellow as a car doesn't seem to be a very common color, let's say. It would be unusual, other than some of those Volkswagen Beetles, it'd be unusual to see any color, any car colored yellow, I would think. So, do we just have a bunch of unusual cars here, or is the word yellow being used another way? It means something different than, you know, the color of, I don't have a great example for the second stripe on my guitar chord chart there. We have a light, a yellow light in a swinging wire basket. We have a yellow car again. So, what if we go back to the start here? And we say, oh, I don't have a wireless keyboard with my wireless mouse. I can't do that. Anyone think about the connection between yellow and gold? Has that occurred to you? I wonder what happens if we oh, look at that. 15 references to gold. Now, maybe that was, maybe that's too obvious, but this here, the quote that opens the novel mentioning gold twice seems like maybe something we should pay attention to. And I think that the equation of yellow and gold is quite common through literature. Gold has not often been used as a color description. It's a description of the metal, right? And so in more recent times, gold has become used as a color rather than exclusively as a metal. But if we read yellow as golden colored, then all of a sudden the frames of those glasses being golden colored seems a lot more plausible, doesn't it? And with this sort of obvious theme, I suppose, of great wealth and privilege that runs through this entire novel, I think we have to, we can't be surprised that gold is mentioned 15 times, but certainly if we equate yellow as the color of gold, then we might be sort of onto something. And I don't think, and Abby was justifiably sort of stumped by what's the common thread here. What is it that gold stands for? And I'm going to suggest that the recurring mention of gold and of yellow is not necessarily standing for, God or wealth or something like that directly. I think what it's doing in the story is that it is the recurrence of the color is sort of coloring the way that we read the novel and the way that we are seeing it in our minds. And so it's part of painting that picture of opulence, of extreme wealth and extreme sort of luxury. And certainly gold obviously does that, but even a very bright yellow color would seem quite luxurious in 100 years ago from now. It would not be a common color that would be worn by anybody in the Valley of the Ashes, for example. So if we go back to our rats, I really just keep doing that as an excuse to show off my Thor costume. I mean my muscles. That's what I mean. Okay, working this sideways while I'm looking up there is harder than it looks. It was a tab, not a window. Okay, so the green light. We first hear about the green light is at the end of chapter 1. And when Nick first sees Gatsby, Gatsby appears to be reaching toward the light, trembling. Later, when he finally meets Daisy again, he mentions to her how the green light was always there when he looked towards her home. Something seems to occur to him at that moment, as if the green light represented the idea that Daisy was a world away from him. The light was close to her even if he was not. So when he and Daisy meet again, the green light loses its magic and Daisy is no longer part of a fairy tale. The green light is no longer important because Daisy is now there with him. So that is, I'd say that's pretty accurate and important. So the importance of the green light is only established long after we see it, when we realize, oh, it was Daisy that he was desperately trying to reach towards, and now we understand that little aspect of his character. Well, it's maybe not a little aspect, this major aspect of his character. And let's follow up on that. I agree with what Emily has to say on the symbolism of the green light. In the first chapter, when Gatsby stretched out his arm to touch the green light, it was somehow, in his own way, the same as touching Daisy and being with her. It loses its significance when they finally reunite in chapter 5, because he's finally with her once again. Although they may not be together romantically, platonically they've rekindled something between each other. I do have to add, though, that the entire interaction between Gatsby and Daisy made me extremely uncomfortable. I'm glad that you said that. It also did not help that Nick was basically third-wheeling the most awkward couple I've ever seen or read. He really was. But from the perspective of a writer, he needed to be third-wheeling that so that we could know about it, right? The chapter gave me secondhand embarrassment. I mean, she cried about shirts. Shirts! It's so weird. I didn't feel any sympathy at all for the heartbreak or whatever they went through. I feel sympathy for myself from having to read all of that. Why, Grunerud, why? You didn't actually delete this, and Did you?
I did, but I guess I didn't see. But whatever.
Okay, so I'm glad you didn't delete that, because that's what we need. That's what we need. Did any of you feel sympathy for Daisy? No. Maybe a tiny little bit for Gatsby. Maybe. Because, he wanted this for so long and all of that kind of stuff. I find it interesting, and we talked about this yesterday a little bit. I find it interesting that it's never made clear that, that there's anything like explicitly cheating going on. It's just kind of implied that there is, whether it's with Tom and Myrtle or it's with Gatsby and Daisy. That's all just left implied, and we don't need to sink to the level of describing it in detail. I think that is probably a good thing, although that wouldn't be the style in current literature. But I'm going to suggest to you that you're not supposed to like Daisy. Right? And I think I maybe asked you guys this earlier, how many of you liked her after the first couple of chapters? After the first couple of chapters, your impressions were like, whatever. I don't really like her, but whatever, right? There was that bit about where she said about her baby that she hopes she grew up to be a beautiful fool. And you're like, I don't really think I'm on board with that, really, Daisy, but okay. So you could read that as being, she's smarter than she's allowed to be, and you could feel sorry for her because as a woman, she's more powerless or something like that. Like that reading is possible. I'm not saying that it's the most obvious reading or that it's necessary reading, but it's possible. But here, now, if you are reading The Great Gatsby as something that is supposed to be a love story, then this comment is 100% justified. If it's supposed to be a love story, if Gatsby is supposed to be our romantic hero. But I don't think that that's how we should read it. And I know that I always say that your opinion is just as important as mine. And it is, but I'm telling you my opinion. I don't think that Gatsby is supposed to be, the novel, not the character, is supposed to be a romance, really. Now, we have Nick as our narrator, and so he's coloring everything, right? Like we're seeing everything through his eyes. And so he says that Gatsby turned out all right in the end, right? Like that's what the story starts with. Gatsby turned out all right in the end. What does that mean? we are probably not sure yet. But is there anything admirable about the fact that he has been obsessed with the one girl he dated for a month or whatever 5 years ago? Hasn't spoken to her or seen her in the meantime, but he's obsessed with her? Is that something that we should be admiring? I'm going to suggest no. Now, it's not to the point of the sort of dangerous and definitely bad stalker behavior where he's like hiding in the bushes outside of her window or something. So it's not at that level, but he's been obsessed with the same girl for 5 years. And I got to tell you guys, that is not healthy, right? And this, no matter what you might think, so there's always somebody else out there, right? That's not, the world doesn't work like, oh, it's got to be Daisy or nothing. If you're limiting yourself to that, then you are going to be unhappy. And so maybe Fitzgerald is suggesting that to us. He's hinting at that to us. We don't get the sense that one true love is really kind of going to be the theme here. Like, that's not the tone that the story's really had up to this point. I think that you would agree. Now, we could see it, and again, we're on my opinion here, we could see it as somewhat heroic, certainly romantic, if Gatsby was really invested in, is a nicer way of saying it, than obsessed with Daisy, because of some unique and special qualities that she had that made her somehow special. But we don't get any sense of that from her. Like, she's pretty and she has a nice voice is all that we get. And so, like, if that's where your bar is, there's a lot of pretty girls out there, I'm going to suggest. Like, that's for you, Ruben. Don't forget. There's a lot of pretty girls out there. Like, pick another one, man. Like, so there's nothing special about her as far as we can tell. So that makes Gatsby's preoccupation a whole lot less heroic, a whole lot less understandable, I think. This is from my perspective. So, as a heterosexual dude, I'm reading that going, come on, man, that's weak sauce. Like, you lost your chance at that one. Go find another girl. It's not that hard. I don't know. And she's not that special. So that has to tell us something else, though. So if Daisy is just pretty and has a nice voice, then what is it that Gatsby is so obsessed with? This is quite possibly the central question of this book. So I don't want to answer it for you. But I want you to be thinking about it. What is it about her that is his source of obsession? Because he is young and handsome and incredibly wealthy, and apparently incredibly and completely uninterested in any woman who is not Daisy. And so what is that? And that is the most important question of the book, I think. And that can maybe put into perspective all of the rest of it. If we can put those thoughts into words.